Alright, problem 50. At Oceantide Dock, the first low tide of the day occurs at midnight, when the depth of the water is 2 meters, and the first high tide occurs at 6:30 a.m. with a depth of 8 meters. Assume that the depth of the water varies sinusoidally with the time. Part A, sketch and label a graph showing the depth d of the water at the dock as a function of time. T. Let t equal 0 represent midnight. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is draw a graph. You want to make sure that you label it. The y-axis represents depth. The x-axis is time. T equals 0 represents midnight. So you want to make sure that you label appropriately, and we put the times on there. So at midnight, the water is 2 meters. The first high tide occurs at 6:30, so 6:30, 6:5 a.m. at 8. Okay? So it takes 6.5 hours to go from low tide to high tide. So another 6.5 hours would put us at 1 p.m., which would give us our second low tide. Another 6.5 hours later, you'd get 7:30 p.m., which would be our next high tide. So there is a graph for the problem. Part B, determine a trigonometric model that represents the graph. Well, the amplitude is the absolute value of the max minus the min over 2, so 8 minus 2 divided by 2 is 3. If you look at the graph, it takes 6.5 hours to go from a low tide to a high tide. So therefore it takes 13 hours to go from low tide to low tide. So the period is 13. So B is equal to 2 pi over 13. Because I'm starting at a minimum value, I'm going to use a cosine. So the phase shift is 0. To find the vertical shift, it's max plus min divided by 2. So 8 plus 2 is 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my equation is d equals negative 3 cosine 2 pi over 13t plus 5. It's negative because I'm starting at a minimum value. Part C says, suppose a tanker requiring at least 3 meters of water depth is planning to dock after midnight. Determine the earliest time that the tanker can dock. So first thing we need to do is go and put our equation in. Alright, so negative 3 cosine 2 pi divided by 13 x, which is our variable in the calculator, plus 5. Now it needs at least 3 meters of water, so y2 we're going to put in 3. Now let's go to our window real quick. So 0 to 24, we'll do 24 hours. And make our scale 2 is fine. The minimum depth, I'll leave it 0. And I'll make it 10. And we can make the scale 1. And we're going to graph. So there's our cosine wave. And there is 3 feet. So we need to find the first time. So if we go to second trace, which is calc, to the intersection, number 5, and you arrow your cursor over until it gets to approximately where they intersect. Hit enter, enter, enter. And basically 1.74 hours after midnight. Well, to get an exact time, if you take 0.74 times 60, that gives us 44 minutes. So it's about a little after 1:44 a.m.